Said he went to a conference on Hinduism in Chicago, and the Swami got up and did this breathing technique. So it's very ancient. And what it says about it is that we will be breathing 3 times in our nostrils and out, twice, because there are 2 different parts to this pattern. I'll show those to you. And what he said was, what the reading said was, this opens the centers of the body, provided the body is purified to your own best understanding. He called this the true sign of the cross. And he also said that the first part of this is to take in strength as you breathe. And the second part of it will be to open the centers of the body. Okay, so I'll very quickly show you what it's going to be like. And I always use this finger as an anchor here, which is right over the pituitary. And so what you do is you close the left nostril and inhale through the right nostril and exhale through the mouth. So this is a vertical breathing. We'll do that 3 times together, because that will bring a harmony among us and a unity among us that will allow all of us to tune into each other also. The second half of this is to inhale through the left nostril and exhale through the right. Okay, so it's close the left nostril and inhale through the right, out through the mouth, and then inhale through the left and exhale through the right. Okay, so I will lead this so that we do it sort of in unison, because that brings more of the kind of unity. I usually do this in my art classes, except not this particular thing. I just had to sit and breathe 3 times together to quiet ourselves and be ready to gather information and to work. And it really helped a lot. So if you're ready, put a finger at the 3rd eye, the pituitary, and close the left nostril. Inhale through the right and out through the mouth. 1. This is 2, out. 3, in and out. Now close the right nostril and inhale through the left nostril. 1, out through the right, in through the left, out through the right. That was the second one. And one more time. In through the left and out through the right. And some people, in doing that, I suggest say, in the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, and in the name of the Holy Spirit for each one of those 2. And part of the reason for that is because God the Creator exists right here in us. This is not just the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland was the very first thing to form in the embryo. And because of its secretions, it created everything that we are physically. Our DNA came through that, and we find that I have found in the last couple of months that I've developed a different kind of relationship with God that is more like what Jesus taught, God as Father. And I get shivers talking about it because I can sometimes feel God the Father here, becoming my friend and me becoming a real son, not just in name, but a sense of connection that I've never had before. And I've often dumped stuff onto the Father, said, I can't handle this. And I lose things. Just Friday night, I lost my hearing aids. Could not find them for 24 hours. And I kept saying, okay, okay, okay. And I had some people helping to pray. And I got up on Saturday morning, and I walked over to one of my drawers in my bureau, and there they were. They got entangled in with some strings of something else I put in that drawer, and I couldn't see them until I opened that drawer. I everywhere in my house. There's no such thing as a problem without a gift for you in his hands. And in that meantime, I got a lot of little stuff taken care of all over my house when I was looking for this. So that was the benefit of it that came as an extra gift. But this relationship really comes from the idea that all there is God. And we know that. We know that in our minds. We believe it. But we don't always experience it. And I have to tell you that when I was 27 years old, my first Saturn return, that I inadvertently, if there is such a thing as an accident, had an experience that could be called a near-death experience, but it's like no other near-death experience I've ever read about. And what happened was, I finally concluded after decades of realizing this is what really happened. I experienced the early days of my own soul's creation, before I was a physical body, when I was still spirit. And we were all there. And I'm sure some of you were very near me at that time also, because we travel in soul groups. And one thing that came to me was the importance of oneness, and the only problem in the universe is separation. Separation leads to insecurity and fear, and that happens as individuals. Being frightened, we try to figure out, how can I protect myself? I can protect myself with money, with power, with cutting myself off from other people. But the truth is, you can't escape yourself. You can't escape God. You can believe you're God and stay cut off, but it's not going to work. God was smarter than we are. And besides that, think about this, and you may have. God was all there was. And anything God created was a servant. So God finally got lonely enough. The Cayce readings say this. God became lonely. God desired companionship. And the only way to have true companionship is to create beings that are free will and can choose to become one with that all creative force. Cayce called God the creative forces, plural. And so what did God have to work with? Only itself. Its own spirit, its own energy. And so God, shall we say, extracted, sacrificed part of itself, and that's each one of us. So you are literally a God in the making. And our purpose is to become co-creators with God in the universe. And so, by God having done this, He can love us all, without question. Why? Because again, God is smarter than we are. God knew that there had to be some way of us learning how to become one with Him. And this is the story of the prodigal in the Bible. We were allowed to go out, do whatever we wanted, but there is a law of justice, the law of karma, of cause and effect, of compensation, whatever you'd like to say it is. What you have done will be done to you. There's no escape. And so everything you have sent out as an educational enlightenment experience will come back to you, so you can experience what you have done exactly the way you have sent it out and to the intensity you've sent it out to anybody else. Now that's scary. You can't escape it. It will happen. And that's why God can judge us, because we punish ourselves. There's no hell that we go to in a permanent eternity that so many religions teach. And they don't want to believe in the method that God used because it involves reincarnation. We have always lived. We have always existed from time immemorial, because eternity is every moment, right now, as we're here, right now, every moment, every moment. If our eternal soul is eternal, we have always existed. We will always exist. And so, God is waiting for us to educate ourselves through experience and decide the best way to live is in harmony with the creative laws of the universe. Now, what are those laws? Well, Edgar Cayce had this to say: spirit is the life, mind is the builder, and the physical is the result. And I inserted this: will is the chooser. Spirit is the life. That's this. That's the pituitary. That's God the Father dwelling in you, waiting for you to become a friend of His and its. Mind is the builder. Will, this center right here, the thyroid center, is the result. The physical is the result of mind and will acting to put a pattern built onto the energy that is. I am. This is I am. I exist. This is the energy of the universe. This is God undifferentiated, shall we say, in many ways. Our mind builds a pattern, an image of what we want to create, and then we make choices based on that, how we want to proceed. We do it all the time. You want to build a house? Why? Well, that sometimes rises up in you as an unexplainable urge. You want a home. So what do? You start taking the energy and building the image of the house you want in your conscious mind here. The Christ consciousness actually is what this is about, the pineal gland. And you talk to contractors and you get the loan and you select the materials and the decorations and all this kind of stuff. And that's the mind building from this energy outward. And then finally, it's built. So spirit is the life. It's the building blocks, the energy of the universe that we can make use of in order to create an idea, a thought form. And the more you hold that thought form, the more it's going to manifest physically. Spirit is the life, mind is the builder, the physical is the result. Cayce said this many times. Now, I'm going to bring this right now down to a different level. If I can find somebody in here. Is anybody having trouble with their shoulders? Anybody having trouble with carpal tunnel or their hands? Or even their neck? Check your body out. Do this. Does anybody have any problem doing this? A big circle. Look how my arm's near my ear. Anybody feel any restriction or discomfort by doing that? Anybody? Let's see an arm if you have a problem with that area. No? Everybody know? Okay. Come on over. Whoever you were pointing at, who, Jill? Was that you?
No.
Jane was one of my students at the massage school, so. Okay. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a sports massage therapeutic technique. And there are two, well there are three, but two that are useful all the time in my massage practice as therapeutic techniques that I've found are better than any techniques ever, anywhere. Because it uses your body and what the body's capable of to heal you. This is not drugs or surgery. It's understanding how your body and your body-mind works. And the way it works is this. We have a nervous system that runs down the back on either side of the spine. I can't get this to there. Can you still hear me? Okay. So That nervous system has two trunks that run down on either side of the spine in what's called the laminar groove. You can see the spinous processes, the bumps on the back. On either side is a groove that goes down there, and on either side of that are two trunks, major trunks of this nervous system. One of those trunks is also subdivided. So we have the conscious nervous system, the voluntary nervous system. That's one of the major two trunks. And we can choose to do things. I can choose to walk across a room. I don't have to think about it because my brain knows how to do what I want it to do. And the other half is the unconscious, the autonomic, involuntary nervous system. And that's a part of this area right here of who we are. I'll get back to that in a minute. But right now I just want to talk about this. That unconscious half of the nervous system has two trunks, two branches, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The parasympathetic is our fight or flight. It arouses us, gets us going, gives us energy, and it secretes hormones in the endocrine system in order to help us with that. That's the sympathetic. It's in sympathy with what we are trying to do because we're afraid or there's some threat or we need to get going and get in the car to get to work. On the other side of that is the parasympathetic. And that's the part we use when we meditate. It calms us down. It pulls us back to oneness, quiets us. So what happens if we do this, if we're trying to stretch our neck, is happening in the parasympathetic side. That doesn't accomplish anything. Not very much anyway. Because what we need to do, well, let me back up for just a second. If this doesn't go over to your shoulder, it's because the muscles here are tight. There are nerves sending impulses, electrical impulses. And by the way, Cayce said God is electricity. Anyway, there are electrical impulses from the nerves firing into these muscle fibers, and that causes them to contract. When a person is electrocuted, like that, they die. It's an overload of electricity. But this, just pushing this over, does not wake up the nerve and get it to cooperate and work with us. See? But if I do hold her here and she leans back gently into my hand, and you can move your head around to wherever it feels like it's being the most effective as a position, I want you to feel it in the muscle fibers that are the worst, giving you the worst restriction or pain. Now the nerve is awake. It's trying to do something. And this re-educates the nerve. It makes it realize, I don't need to be doing this. And I'm going to back up here again for just a moment and talk about that. I think I can remember where I was going with that. Okay. Our consciousness works a lot like computers. Computers are mimics, really, of how humans work and think. And let's say that in the universe, for the ideal human, that there is a perfect operating system for our bodies. A perfect operating system, where everything is working exactly like it should. But because we have existed for so long and we've had such a history, we are born with a modified version of that is our personal version of the OS, of the operating system for this body. It takes into account karma and what we need to learn and what we should be born with in our DNA. So that operating system is faulty in some ways and beneficial in others. Everything, every absolute illness or problem in your body is lodged in that part of your being. The DNA. The potential for cancer is in the DNA. When you get it, or if you get it or not, has to do with consciousness. Something awakens in a way that you feel like you have to, that the unconscious mind feels like it needs to give you cancer. Mind is a builder. Everything you think is what you become. So how can we work with that? Well, for instance, well, the third level, well, okay, I'm getting a little bit confused. Now I'm on track. Okay, so you have your own ROM memory, personal version of the operating system that is ideal. Okay? That is inviolable pretty much. Just like in a computer, you can't get into the ROM memory to screw around with it. Well, there are ways of doing it, though.
Did you say you have your own bond, B-O-N-D memory? I don't know.
It's R-O-M, ROM.
Oh, ROM.
ROM memory, sorry. Now, as life goes on, we also have a RAM memory factor. RAM is everyday operating in the system. And so the computer starts acting crazy, doesn't work right. What do? You turn it off and back on. It clears the RAM memory. So you're back to ROM memory, but you're still back to that operating system that is your personal one, that is not the ideal one. Whether it's good or bad, the karma that you have stored in there, it's still not ideal. I wonder if Jesus was actually born with a perfect operating system. Or at least the potential for that. Because our physical bodies are where we meet God. This is the temple. This is where you meet God. And it took me a long time to internalize that, so I now relate to God, my Father, my Creator, and the star seed that I am, the pattern that I am unfolding. I'd like to ask people right now, anymore, do you have an aura? How many of you think you have an aura?
Oh.
Have you ever thought about this? The aura has you.
Go.
Your energy field is here. That's your consciousness. And scientists are more and more being able to say consciousness does not reside in the brain. It's out here around us. But our aura has helped to coalesce to make a physical body for us so that it's our shield. We are embedded in it. We are walking around inside this energy that is our soul. And that's a different way of looking at it. We all know that we're spirits having a physical experience, and you really need to think about the fact that this is the space suit I designed to be able to experience physical reality. Because I was tempted when I was a spirit coming through the universe, flowing through the rivers of time and space. And I saw this solar system, and I saw this planet. Each one of us did this. And we said, that looks very interesting. That's the slowest rate of vibration possible in the universe. And it looks like it's very interesting. Cayce says, we sought consciousness for our own pleasure. We sought consciousness for our own pleasure in the physical body. We wanted to know what it was like. It took a long time. The readings of Ray Stanford actually talk about how we had to work through creating the 4 lower centers of the body that are our physical body, and which enable us to finally incarnate. Because in the spirit form, we were so rarefied that we had to get layer and layer and layer and layer of matter that was more and more crystallized and codified and put into physical form in order to be able to have a physical body. So it took a long time for us to figure out how to do that. Now, Edgar Cayce said that when we did that and we got incarnated in the body, that we started making bad choices and good choices. But those bad choices involved a lowering of our consciousness, a lowering of our rate of vibration. a limitation. And we chose that limitation so that we couldn't telepathically be in touch with each other and know what we were all thinking and doing. And we're headed back toward that, however. But anyway, Cayce said we created an image, a thought form of the kind of physical body we wanted for our next foray into incarnation. And that this is where the combination of animals and human bodies that show up in Egypt were actually real people. We could create a thought form of the kind of body we wanted and then inhabit it. And we inhabited it for as long as, like in a car battery, that battery was viable, and when it ran out of a charge, it died. And we were the same way. We built enough of a thought form amount of powerful energy into that body so that when it was all used up, we could escape from it. And until then, we were entrapped in it. And more we sank in consciousness and got stuck here. No salvation, no way of salvation. We were just spiraling into this and going through these lifetimes and having fun and sometimes not because karma existed. And so what happened then, Cayce says, is that there was a soul, S-O-U-L, a soul, that he called Amelius. And that word is the root of ameliorate. Ameliorate means to be a go-between to help make things better. And this soul in consciousness spoke with the Father God and said, I will volunteer to go, because he had already gone through all of his incarnations, had returned to oneness in the Christ consciousness. And this being, which was both male and female in balance, Amelius, said, I will volunteer it, and stepping forward were 144,000 other souls who said, we will go too. We will try to show these people on this planet how to escape the never-ending cycle that they would be caught in without some help of guides to come back and show them how to do this. And so that group of souls came here, saw what was going on, tried to figure out how to create a perfect body, an immaculate concept, immaculate conception of what a perfect body could be like, that could actually manifest and experience God in the physical. And just a little aside here, it finally dawned on me, why do we like sex so much? Cayce said, in the physical body, that's the closest we come to experiencing oneness with God. An orgasm is the experience, briefly, of approaching what it feels like to be in God's presence. Now, that made a lot of sense. Because I say, if death is the last to be overcome, sex is the next to the last. To be able to escape from here. Okay, so Amelius and these souls came, they saw what was happening on this planet, they looked around to see, well, what being that already exists can we emulate or work with? And using thought power, thought energy, thought form, they saw that certain members of the ape families showed the potential, if they hovered around them and sent energy to them, of evolving into the kind of Homo sapiens that we are today. And there were other groups that were also forming and trying things like this also. So anyway, the Amelius and realized that he was going to have to, it was going to have to separate its feminine and masculine sides. The masculine does things, the feminine receives things. So we are an active and a passive. We're like a computer, the ones and the zeros. That's what energy is all about, what vibration is all about. It's a movement and a pause. Masculine, feminine, positive or yang and yin. So all of this starts falling into place and making a lot of sense archetypally, if you stop and think about it. So these beings were able to hover around these anthropoid apes and cause them to evolve very quickly in 5 places on the planet at the same time. 1 for each race, 1 for each sense. Each race is master or is the shepherd of one sense. And we're in a process right now of bringing that all together also, as we see more racial intermarriages and this sort of thing. So we're actually we're actually moving upward, but there are so many people that are dragging their feet. They don't want to change. Why? Going back to the very first thing I told you, they believe in separation. They believe in fear. They're afraid. They want to hold on to their money, their power, their fame, anything that they think makes them protected. Well, we're in the age of Aquarius now. We just crossed the threshold in my intuition last December 21st. Just crossed the very center. We're just creeping into it a little bit at a time. We've got another 1,000 years or more here, or 2,000, to live in the age of Aquarius. But we are definitely over the threshold out of the age of Pisces. It is losing its power. And the same thing is happening, in my opinion, that happened when Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt. They were at the cusp of 2 ages. And Moses and God had to figure out a way to get them out of there. They didn't want to go, really. When they got over to the other side of the Red Sea and were wandering around in the desert, they didn't like that. The older generation, the consciousness of the previous age, Taurus, was embedded in them. So what did they do? Moses went on the mountain to get the new law. We have no idea what was on those tablets. Could have been very well what Jesus gave us later. His 2 laws. But he came down and saw the golden calf, that they had put all their gold together and cast a golden calf, symbol of the age of Taurus, a bull. And Moses said, you people aren't ready for these. So he broke it, went up and got children's laws. Thou shalt not do this, slap your hand, etc., etc. And they had to wander around in the desert 40 years. That's the number of cleansing and purification, according to Cayce. Noah was in his boat 40 days and 40 nights. Jesus was in the desert 40 days and 40 nights, being tempted and purified, being purged. And so the Israelites were wandering around in the desert for 40 years while the older generation gradually died away. And the younger generation that were born there had no memory, direct memory of being in Egypt. The older generation, they wanted to go back. They knew how it worked. It was more comfortable, even if they were slaves. But God said, no, you're my people. I need to have you lead the way for the whole planet. And so they finally were able to go into the promised land heaven. And right here I'd like to say that Jesus gave the prayer that he said is the perfect prayer that talks to each one of our parts of consciousness. Our Father, this is the pituitary here. Because the pineal sits above it. In the head, the pineal is here, the pituitary is back and higher. And so whenever you see forward views of this, the pineal appears to be higher than the pituitary, but it's really not. It's an arch, and it's the shepherd's crook. And that's the caduceus for the medical profession, with the kundalini coming up, the energy, the power coming up. Anyway, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. This is where our fears about physical food and shelter and taking care of sustenance really exists. The gonads or ovaries. And forgive me as I forgive others. You go jump up here. Creating a rebalancing. And delivered, let's see, what is it after that?
Delivers not into temptation.
What's that?
Not into temptation.
Deliver.
Oh, yeah. So this is the tempting center. And Cayce says this center is a doorway that works like this. And he said there's a connection between this and the pineal. And so if we open it this way, it goes back down here and it makes us want to be physically safe. But if we open it this way, it leads us up here. And so, deliver us from evil, the opposite of which is live. Evil backwards is live, live. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. So there's a cycle here that Cayce said, open these centers when you say the Lord's Prayer that speaks to the meaning of each one. And these have other meanings. That's what this is all about. I'm not going to go into that in detail today, but someday I could do that in a different kind of course. So anyway, we're back to Jane for a minute here.
Should have moved.
And she's got plenty to work on right here that I'm feeling. And so anyway, as I said, there are two methods for working with the nerves here to try to wipe out the RAM memory, the overlay, and at least get back to our ROM memory that didn't have that happening before. All kinds of things happen to create the misunderstanding in the RAM memory. We can be driving in traffic and grasping that wheel all the time, and that repetition builds a memory, a conditioned response in the nerves that are controlling that particular set of muscles. Okay, so she's got memory here. She's got RAM memory right here. And one thing I can do is this. I'm just leaning gently into the center because I did this, and I can tell where the center is. I'm just leaning like that, and the RAM memory starts getting the message, oh, ow. But some people say, oh, that hurts so good. And that's your unconscious mind, the autonomic nervous system talking to you. That's its language. It's telling you how you feel. That's how it communicates. That's the only language it knows. It doesn't know words. Excuse me a second here. Let me see what I've got. I'm all over the map. I told you at the beginning, in the introduction, that this might be very right brain. Okay. Would you pass these around, and I'll take a few to the other side to make it faster. Okay. This is your autonomic nervous system at work. I love this cartoon. You want one?
Yes, please.
I think we should have enough.
Oh,
Give one to
I
Robert.
love this. I have this on my
Okay.
refrigerator. You need one?
Any left over?
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. This is your autonomic nervous system. This is your vegetative nervous system. Any other term, involuntary. It's a creature of habit. The overlay we have is that we have consciousness that's different from what an animal has. We have another overlay. We can choose. We have consciousness.
That's too close. That's my doggy.
And in case Ginger isn't bad enough, we have Fluffy. And Fluffy is even worse. Ginger at least recognizes he's being spoken to, but Fluffy is like, duh. Yawn. We all know how cats are independent. Larry, did you get one?
Don't bet. By the way, I took my mask off. We just had a pastoral council meeting. We're following CDC guidelines and they're no longer required for church. So it's up to you if you want to wear one, you're welcome to.
It's not good for you.
Hey, Larry.
Yeah.
And another way the autonomic nervous system works is this. I love these cartoons. They're so intelligent. They're so good at teaching us things. Anybody still need one? This is your autonomic nervous system. You're programmed with overlays. With overlays. We're brainwashed. And something I wanted to tell you that just came back. One other thing I had in that experience I told you about when I was 27 was, and this was really revelatory to me, the cells of your body are lying to you.
Repeat that.
The cells of your body are lying to you. They are trying to convince you you're made of matter, that you're physical, that you belong to this earth. Why? Because all that evolved upward before we ever got involved here. That we're made of the same stuff that plants and algae and all the rest of it was created with. So from here down, that part of us is trying to get control of us and tell us, you're a material being. Go for food, go for shelter, go for sex, go for greed, go for power, go for fame. And the worst of them all is the solar plexus. There are actually 6 or 7 nerve plexuses in the body, and the solar plexus is the most powerful. This is the king of the jungle. This is the king of beasts. This is the lion. And this is the true color for masculinity, yellow. Blue is feminine. That's the archetype. The Madonna is always clad in blue by law. But this is the masculine. This is the force that changes things. And this is a part that receives things and holds it. Cayce said the difference between masculine and feminine is the women, the female, the yin energy holds and ponders things in her heart. That's the nature of our own yin energy, each one of us. So we can go out and do things, and that's why Jesus had to be masculine, because he had to do things. But his mother, who was his twin soul, was the one who brought him in and nurtured him and took care of him. But they were actually one soul. There's a difference between a soulmate and a twin soul. Yeah. And Mamelius, before entering matter and hit 144,000, the rib that came out of Mamelius represented the divine feminine. Lilith, Cayce said, was the name of that energy. And Mamelius and Lilith became Adam and Eve. And they had other incarnations together. And that many of us have twin souls that were separated from us. And it's very hard to resist that. Edgar Cayce and Gladys Davis were twin souls.
Oh, sure.
And those of you that know the Cayce story, there was a time when he and she were tempted to have a child. And even his reading said that would be okay. But he knew that people being what they were, they couldn't accept that, so they did not. They were able to restrain themselves. So, but anyway. Okay, so I told you this is very right brain, so we're kind of bouncing around. But it's all kind of parts of the same story, the same idea. Now, I'm going to come back to Jane, and right here I was doing some gentle pressure, because pressing more does not help. You cannot get the body to relax faster than it's able to do. And besides that, this is like layers of an onion. And we're trying to get through the outer layers and down into the center of it. Now, Jonelle, I worked on you years ago.
Oh, man.
And some of the others in here.
Yeah, I couldn't walk when we were at
Yeah, when we were over at Board's Corner
No,
in the
but there,
restaurant.
but also when we were in New York,
Oh, there too?
at the,
Okay,
yeah, remember
well,
I couldn't walk one
A
night.
couple of times. And so this released it. This released the problem. This is the RAM memory in action, and Jane's RAM memory is starting to let go of some. I can feel it. It's softening.
She's falling asleep.
The impulses are starting to slow down into here. Can you feel that? You feel the relief. At least 80% of all physical pain is muscular. At least 80%. Now, I had a stomach problem a couple of days ago, and it certainly was here and not in my muscles, but at the same time, I can still safely say that when people come to me to get work done that have problems of this type, that it can be very dramatic. And sometimes all I have to do, and I'm not really just laying on hands, although there's energy involved, but I'm also giving them a certain amount of pressure, gentle pressure, that gets the body-mind's attention, gets the nerves' attention that are in this area right here. And now, Jane, I want you to raise your arm up and move it around. I'm going to put just a little pressure on it. And I want you to move around. I'm going to follow you. And I want you to check it out first, and then find the position, and I guess you have, where it's bothering you the most, right there. Okay, now wait. You don't have to push hard. All we have to do is call the nerve into active participation. That's all. You don't have to work at it. Just lean a little bit, just so you feel it a little bit in the muscles that are bothering you. That's all there is to it. This is an isometric stretch. An isometric stretch. And in sports massage, they've discovered this, and I don't know why orthopedists and physical therapists don't know about this. It's common knowledge in sports massage, and we have a sports massage team that goes to the Olympics voluntarily, pays their own way, who works on our athletes to help them with this and to help prepare them to compete. And the way they do that is to simply pump blood into the muscles, like that, and to work on the origins and insertions. This is the deltoid. Ouch. Does it hurt? Right there. So this is where the tendon joins into the bone. And then we go down here to where that triangle ends, right here, and press in there. And we go sideways, right there, right there. Ouch.
Ouchie.
And this is what we do in sports massage to prepare an athlete before we allow them to go stretch themselves. Because they will not harm themselves at all, ever, if you pump blood and loosen up the tendons. It's as simple as that. So they work all the muscles that that particular athlete is going to be using in their competition, and it's been shown time after time by clinical studies that doing that enables the athlete to do their work without pain, without possible injury, and they beat all their own records. Beat all their own records. Just by pumping blood, getting fresh blood supply, a durable hyperemia into the muscle, and loosen up the tendons. So that's one aspect of sports massage also that needs to be more in the orthopedic doctor community. Why do drugs and surgery always crop up? Why not try the least invasive ways that are known? Why isn't medical schools teaching this stuff?
They make more money selling drugs.
And also, every profession guards itself. Every profession is defensive about itself and what it knows. And its ego gets involved as a class, and we don't want a massage therapist to tell them what to do. Even if it's been shown. There are some doctors that are waking up more and more with this sort of thing. And a lot of it, they just don't know. Now, I can't go in front of a group of doctors and do this because I don't know the anatomy and physiology that's going to make their left brain satisfied, and I know what I'm talking about. All I can do is demonstrate it to show them it works. That's all I can do. But I can do it. I've been doing these techniques for several decades, and it was only about 5 or 6 years ago that I realized that these are real therapies. These two I'm telling you about. Trigger point therapy, find a point of pain in your body and push on it. Acupressure. Doesn't matter if even the muscle, if it's in your stomach or your organs, if it hurts, that's your body-mind communicating with you again, with feeling, saying, there's a problem here, help. Know what your body-mind is trying to tell you. Through pain, it's pointing to tell you, there's a problem here, right here. And if it happens to say, that's good hurt, then that's great. But even if it's not, and this is going down even farther by me resting on this with this gentle pressure. If I press harder, it's not going to help. And these people that try to do massages, deep tissue massage, it's got to hurt. No, that's BS. The body-mind can only release the muscles as fast as it will. That's all there is to it. Okay, so I want you to raise this arm up again. Now I'm going to follow you again and see. Okay. Go move it around. Usually if I find somebody that really has a certain kind of shoulder problem, it's very dramatic because the arm will be here and then it can be up vertical in a few of these movements, just repeating this technique. Okay. Carpal tunnel, what do? They operate right here on the tunnel. What do? I go up here to the 5 muscles that lift your fingers and the 5 muscle attachments that close your fist. What is carpal tunnel? It's this. You can see it. It raises the tendon here. You can see it standing up. And all I have to do is do trigger point work on where it hurts. Could you tell? And again, I'm trying to be gentle, but there are 5 muscles that attach on this bump up here at your elbow called a condyle. And it has to be a bump so it gets enough surface area for 5 muscles to attach to it, for 5 tendons to have a place on it. And all I have to do is this, and there was a lady that I went to dinner with a good friend of mine, Carol Bush, and she had a trigger finger. And I just reached across the table and did this work on her. Didn't take 5 minutes. No drugs, no surgery. Well, there is an aftermath. Because your body in contracted areas, what we call stress also, is lethal. It is literally lethal. The reason for that is because blood cannot circulate through a contracted muscle. And so it becomes a toxic waste dump in your body. The blood will do everything to circulate around that area because it can't get through it. Make sense? And so you're poisoning yourself. Now, whenever I do this, it releases the lactic acid and other metabolic waste byproducts that are getting flushed out of here, and the next day you can be sore. Why do you get sore after a workout? Same reason. Each cell in your body is like your own body. It has a mouth and intake, it takes in food, it burns up that food, and it poops into your bloodstream what Cayce called dross or ash into your bloodstream. And when that happens, and you don't get it out of your body soon enough, you're going to hurt the next day. How do you stop hurting the next day? Simple again. Cayce said you don't need a doctor most of the time, but you just think you do, and we don't know any other way of getting treated. But anyway, you soak in 4 inches of hot water till it gets a little bit cool, and then you add hot water to it, and you do that for 30 minutes with some Epsom salts in the water, and you sweat. And all that toxic stuff comes right up through the pores of your skin and washes away, and you won't be sore the next day. And the Epsom salt helps why? Another Cayce principle. All disease, all problems, all pain, all suffering on the physical level involves acidity. And what is Epsom salt? Alkaline. So you're actually soaking up magnesium as a nutrient in your body through the cells whenever you have an Epsom salt bath. You ingest the usefulness of magnesium faster that way than taking a pill. So all this is very holistic, and that's oneness. I'm trying to talk about all these different aspects just as they're kind of occurring as we're going through this, to give you some idea of how I think and how I work with stuff like this. And in the Cayce readings, when somebody talks about some kind of many problems, the first thing I say, castor oil packs. Castor oil packs. Castor oil packs cleanse the lymph system. That's been clinically researched with a grant from Pfizer at the ARE clinic back in the 80s or 90s. They found that the appendix is the body's largest lymph organ. Medical science found that out 10, 15 years ago, and not every doctor even knows that. They think it's a vestigial stomach. But everything that's processed in the assimilation process of the small intestine goes to here, goes out, and if there's an overload, it goes into the appendix as an RV's holding tank until you can flush it, or it can flush itself. And so a castor oil pack helps to dissipate and move all that toxicity. And it's good for all the organs. You might do it because of one thing and there's something else going on. It'll fix that too. And I once used a castor oil pack on a severe ankle sprain one night where I couldn't walk at all. I put on a pack, put a sock over it and a plastic bag and slept with it. And the next day, between 12:30 and 1 o'clock exactly, I could feel that pain leaving. And I got up and I walked on that, and I walked all day. I couldn't even do that when I went to bed. So that's pretty miraculous, cleansing the lymph system. Cayce called the lymph our water blood. It's a companion to the bloodstream itself. They work together along with the lymph. I mean, along with the other circulatory factors in our body to cleanse our body, keep it running, keep it operating. So the best thing we can do is preventative, and that means that we have to know how to prevent what's going on that we need to watch out for. And that's where the Cayce readings are a good foundation, and since him, we've learned a lot of other things that we didn't know about, that he wouldn't even have talked about back then, because some of them were problems like insecticides or pesticides and things like that. But anyway, that gets me off onto food and diet. But anyway, he said, eat an 80% alkalizing and 20% acidifying diet. That's very hard to do, because in this country and most countries of the world, it's exactly the opposite. The only things that will alkalize you are fresh, vine-ripened, ideally locally grown fruits and vegetables. That's it. So, how many of you do that? I don't. I can't. But here too, this leads to just to very briefly talk about ideals. And that means that an ideal is like a ladder. You try to get as high up on the ladder as you can under the circumstances. Get as close as you can. Dick Dingus has an organic garden at his house. I love that idea, but I can't do it where I live in my condos. But anyway, That's ideal, because he can pick things when they're ripe and ready to eat, and they're wholesome, and they're not sprayed with any kind of contaminants, and blah, 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 has the right kind of fertilizers. And so ideally, that's how we would all live, but we can't. So we do the best we can. The same thing with true with spiritual ideals. You get as high as you can, you go as far as you go. In my experience back when I was 27, I shot from here to there. And I was sick for several days afterwards. I could barely walk. Everything I ate or drank went straight through me, and something in me said, you don't get something for nothing. And so I had to crawl back down the ladder. And there's a Cayce reading that says, anyone can have an experience with the Christ Spirit, that you have to grow into the Christ consciousness. And that's a step-by-step ascent on a ladder that you have to climb. So we have religions that emphasize the experience of oneness with Christ. That's great. It's an awakening. But it's only a start. In Grapes of Wrath, there's that poor itinerant preacher that shows up who's an alcoholic, and he'd had an experience with God. He was an evangelical preacher, the Holy Spirit, blah, blah, blah. And it was just an experience. It showed him a way, but he didn't know what the way was after that to proceed. When Cayce talked about, well, this. I'm just going to read this. Should the Christ consciousness be described as the awareness within each soul, imprinted in pattern on the mind and waiting to be awakened by the will of the soul's oneness with God? And the answer was correct. That's the idea exactly. Can I read that again?
Yes, I wish you would.
This is a question that Thomas Shigrew asked when he was writing the philosophy section for There Is a River. Should the Christ consciousness be described as the awareness within each soul, imprinted as a pattern on the mind, and waiting to be awakened by the will, by the choices we make, of that soul, of our soul's oneness with God? That's how it works.
But is that going to be a handout for us?
I'm sorry?
Is that going to be a handout that what you just read? Or,
You want this?
well, I'm going to say, have you made handouts about what you
This
just read?
is reading number 5749-14.
Oh, okay. All right.
Anyway, I'm sure I've covered an hour here, and
No.
there's an awful lot here. I would like to say this,
Reading the
that this was a very interesting thing. This is Edgar Cayce's model of the mind. It's a funnel. And we are created in these, if you imagine this goes out into a circle, and all these bumps are us. And we have grown down this way, and as we've grown and gone through the universe, we have accumulated a lot of experiences. And this experience is all stored in our unconscious. There's humanity's unconscious, which is called the collective, the noosphere. It's filled with archetypes. And as we come farther down, we get into our own soul, our own individuality, into our subjective mind and what we call the subconscious. The subconscious is the same thing that doctors try to treat, but do what they do, and psychologists try to treat it also using psychology. Dr. Bruce Lipton, incredible man, one of my heroes.
Yeah, truly.
Wrote a book, and you can see it, you can read it or hear his talk online, YouTube, called The Biology of Belief. The biology of belief. Spirit is the life, mind is the builder, physical is the result. So I added to this, it may be right or wrong, but right here Cayce would say, this is where you and I are at this very moment, talking to each other, at the point of consciousness. And all of this is reflected in this. as much as we can have. And our karma is all stored in here, and everybody else's karma. And right here is where we look out into the outer world. And it's objective world, where we can use logic and reason and testing and scientific proof to try to help us understand all of this. And what happens if we take this around and this around? It forms, what is that tube called? It's a torus, T-O-R-U-S, something like that. Anyway, this all comes back. It just on a roll. The universe is a circle. And so this all is part of the same continuum. Scientists are trying to find God looking this way, and physicists. We're trying to find oneness this way, by going within. Which Cayce said was a lot more possible for us to do if we were dedicated and worked at it. So, I was sneaking in work on her while I was talking. Wasn't I?
Yes, you were.
Yes. Okay. So this should be a little better, but you know, it's amazing because I give little mini versions of this kind of talk to my clients, and I try to tell them in as much as they can accept, in words that they can accept, what I've told you about the nature of their ideal operating system for their body, about ROM memory, about RAM memory. It makes sense to people. They can understand that. And then we work on the RAM memory to clear it, and at least we get them back into ROM memory, which they didn't have as much pain and suffering most of the time in their lives, except for people who are really born with very severe limited human operating systems because of their choices, because of their karma. And God bless them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't forget, if people want to hear more of what you have to say, they should let you know when they're available for a continuing series.
Good. I was hoping you'd say that. And also somewhere I have, I may offer a course that includes this and maybe some more stuff, especially going into this, because this is Alice in Wonderland. This is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This is the with Dorothy, Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz, yes.
They're all about this.
Playground with the goblins.
The four creatures represent these four lower centers.
Lord of the Rings, is that in there somewhere?
This is Toto the dog. This is the straw man, the one who had a brain. This is the cowardly lion. This is the Tin Woodman that needed a heart. So these myths have been with us and sneaking up on us in ways that we don't always understand. And what we're trying to do in the meditation is come up through this funnel and come out into here into universal consciousness. I did this illustration for Carol Bush because she uses guided imagery and music to take people up into these regions for therapeutic processes that really work.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, I had a sheet, and the reason I'm mainly interested in giving you that sheet to fill out is because I have I can send you a link to the philosophy section of There Is a River that talks about so much of what I did today.
Yeah.
It starts with the creation, talks about our purpose, our meaning, and how it all happened, how it all evolved, and in a very metaphysical way. If you're interested in that, just fill this out, your name and your email address, and I will send you that so you can read it for yourself. It was amazingly helpful for me after I had my spiritual experience I told you about. Amazing. I went, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. So you can, let's see, you do have things that here.
Yeah, some of those pens don't work, but I had to keep getting a new one.
You can pass the pen around with it maybe too. Okay, thanks so much for your patience, and I hope this has been
Nice job, Jay.
a help for you in your lives, and I hope you can remember it, digest it, throw it into the hopper, and wake up with some new insights and some new ideas. Thank you. And be sure and build a relationship with your father.
Definitely 2 years.
Look at Abba, Dad.
Thank you.
Oh, good. Okay. Jane just reported feels much better. Proof in the pudding.